want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Mad Men of Masculinity.
Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Well, hello, boys and girls.
You can't handle the truth.
You don't want none of this.
Everybody wants the truth, but everybody can't handle the truth.
Can't handle the truth.
You know what I'm saying?
Telling you.
Whole lot of people say, just be honest, just tell me the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the fact is you can't handle the truth. A lot of times, anyway.
A lot of times you don't really want it.
You know, I wonder sometimes if I want the truth.
Do you want the truth, man? Do you want to know what really is?
The truth is I am Kirk M. Samuels.
Oh, yes. And the truth is I am Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Mad Men of Masculinity, baby.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Hey, you know what I was just doing right now? You know what I was just doing on my phone?
You're being rude. You're looking down. Look me in the eye.
I was on the Book of the Faces.
Oh,
and I was on this particular page, this Mad Men Radio Mad Men Masculinity page, and
it's a great
I saw
page,
this video, and I hit share because I care. And if you care, you would share. Yeah. Obviously, I care, so I'm hitting share.
He's caring. He's sharing. He's giving all he's got, ladies and gentlemen.
So if you're watching us right now, go ahead and hit share. Don't cost you nothing. I mean, man, stop being a chump.
Tell your friends.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, hit share, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. So if you don't know, first of all, trigger alert. Here
big
today.
Trigger alert today. Big trigger alert. And this is as we found out last night, this is going to turn into a whole series of episodes because we could not even get to what we want to talk about last night because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah, man. We went on and on and on, and man, by the time we got 3 segments into the hour-long radio version, man, we were like, yeah, we're probably not going to get to any of the depth that we wanted to. So we're talking about divorce from a man's point of view.
Yes. Divorce, how it affects men, how men can hopefully avoid divorce. I think we're going to go ahead and start like we started last night and get into tips and tricks to maybe avoid getting into relationships that may lead to divorce.
Well, shoot. I mean, first of all, you put out some statistics yesterday, man. That I thought was kind of poignant, and it kind of kicked us off a little bit.
Let's get into some statistics. So nowadays, as we know, most of the marriages are ending in divorce. Over 50%, like 50 or 52%, are ending in divorce, and that's first marriages. Once you get into second marriages, that goes up to about 70%, and then third marriages is up over 80%. So these repeat offenders are either not learning their lessons or just going in blind and not looking at themselves. Also, and we have talked about how men tend to want a woman who may have a lower body count, or they're looking for a little bit of more purity, and the statistics for that are in as well, because there is about an 80% chance if a person has 1 to 2, body count of sexual partners before marriage. But then once it gets over 5, it drops down to less than 50%. I think it's like 25%. And then once you get up into the teens, or like over 10, then it gets down into the teens. So there is a reason a lot of times men are looking for a woman who has less than a high number because of what he has to invest as far as the relationship, what he is on the hook for. And he wants to make sure, or hopefully make sure that, there's some long lasting, what's the word I'm looking for? Tenure, or not tenure. Tenure is for teachers, but he knows that there's going to be less of a chance that she's going to leave.
Yeah. So starting at the beginning, in terms of perspective, be honest. First of all, we're talking about this from 2 guys' perspective, and full disclosure, it ain't necessarily something I'm proud of. And we come in, even between us, there's 2 different perspectives. I'm a multiple time offender. In terms of divorce. And so I have a perspective, and, for y'all, JBK, never married, no kids kind of thing. So, but at the same time, we both have also kind of worked in these kind of circles with people and with guys, and have, a circle of guys around us that have been through it. So unapologetically, we're speaking from a male point of view. But then beyond that, we're also speaking from our own personal perspective, whether it's anecdotal from other people or whether it's, lived experience from ourselves. in terms of relationships and breakups and divorce and all these other kind of things.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's
shoot,
where we're coming
you
from, and you can filter through that.
yeah, I mean, and shoot, you got to have your head buried in the sand nowadays to not have divorce affect you either as a child or as an adult. Or, I mean, people, you have friends, you have family. You probably come from a family that has divorce in it. So, I mean, we have many of the similar experiences, though. We're gonna skew this more towards divorce and men because this is a men's channel. Though, this is something that we're hoping that will be very helpful in the future, even if you have, if you're on like Kirk's side, you were a multiple time offender, or if you're on my side where you haven't dove in yet, hopefully what you get from here will be very informative and entertaining and helpful.
So if you're watching us right now live as we record this, you can go to the Men of Masculinity page on Facebook and you can comment there and we can see it live. And if we see it live, then JBK will make you famous and put you on the screen there. So we love to hear your feedback. We love to hear your perspective on whether you agree or disagree, whether we cray or whatever it is. And even though I've been there, and done that, not in a good way. I was the big dummy that did it wrong a couple of times. I'm not jaded. I'm pretty objective. I firmly believe that that I will marry my final wife next. And part of that for me, and the reason I'm so firm, first of all, I'm kind of wired that way, and I feel like I'm comfortable with saying that. I'm very comfortable with myself and being by myself and doing things by myself and all those kinds of things. But at the same time, I know that I'm wired for a relationship and I'm wired for, intimate love in those kind of ways. And I firmly believe that, part of the reason why I exited marriage in some bad ways, in the ways we don't want to exit marriage, is because of the way I went into marriage. All marriages end. We acknowledge that when we get married, till death do us part. Ideally, I think ideally that is the way marriages end. But unfortunately, one would hope in the best case scenario.
Right.
Otherwise, otherwise it ends up getting flushed down the toilet.
Well, and that's what I think one of the reasons we want to do this episode is to talk about the harsh facts and realities of divorce and men nowadays, and the fact that it's just not a good scene. And a lot of guys are just saying, I'm not playing that game anymore. Kirk has got hope. He's wired that way. A lot of us are looking at just the statistics and numbers going, I don't know, because if I was jumping out of an airplane and I had a 50% chance of that parachute not opening, I might think twice about doing it. And these are the basically 1 and 2 statistics that a lot of people are looking at today. Plus, not only that, but a lot of the traditional mindsets and morals that used to be part and parcel and for the foundation for marriage, they're just kind of going out the window nowadays. And so we have a lot of people who may still want relationships, though they may not look at it as far as the traditional marriage, because of everybody wants to have their cake and eat it too. Nobody wants to stick with it. And I think that's where a lot of the issues with marriage goes today, because marriage is about going through things together, but everybody's just looking for that escape route. They're always like, oh, I'm not happy, or I'm having a bad week, so I'm out. This is about trying to be together for life.
Even in terms of jumping out of the airplane, I think, even with that word picture, if you're going to go jump out of an airplane, you don't go pack your chute. You don't go pack your own chute, especially when you don't know how to pack a chute. I mean, that's where the failure comes in, for at least in my case. And a lot of the divorce statistics, a lot of that the big number is skewed by the small number, the smaller number being the people that are the repeat offenders. And I think the reason why the repeat offenders keep repeating the offense is because the repeat offenders don't learn from all of their mistakes, and they keep doing the same dumb thing over and over again, expecting different results. And part of that comes from working on yourself first. That's why the secret number 1 in the 7 secrets of modern dating, right there. Secret number 1 is work on yourself. And I think when you work on yourself, when you learn how to pack a chute, and you learn to do it well, and you learn from other people, and you do the work to get there, then you can be, I think, confident to go jump out of the airplane. If 50% don't work, then 50% do. Even if you say 75% of third marriages don't work, Well, that means 25% do. So I look at that as 25% of the people probably got their poop in the group, and they figured out, what they were lacking, and they fixed it, and they married the right person, starting with the right person in the mirror.
Yeah, and I think that's where we really need to start with this episode, is that we need to take a little bit of the romance out of when we look at marriage. We need to look at it more as a business, because it is a contractual agreement, and you are basically creating a business together. You're creating a contractual agreement together, but also starting with getting the stars out of your eyes, because I think we was it 18 months that the honeymoon phase lasts. So a lot of folks, if you're getting married within an 18-month period, you're still in the honeymoon phase. You're not even rational yet. You still got all the oxytocin and serotonin making you high, and you think rainbows and stuff come out of their behind, and they're the best thing on earth. You haven't even gotten to a point where you wake up in the morning and go, you stink, you need to go shower, or you have those day-to-day things that you need to actually be living with this person. So I mean, just one thing to keep in mind is that if you're with somebody for less than 18 months, and I think 2 years should be a bottom line kind of threshold before you get married. Now, of course, we always have the star-crossed lover syndrome, and the people who got they just met, and they're so full of love that they can't imagine ever being apart, so they're walking down the aisle in 6 months. Well, hopefully that works for them, but a lot of times it doesn't. But just knowing some of these statistics, and knowing just kind of how we work as human animals, will help you go into this with your eyes open, go into relationships with the idea towards marriage. Because a lot of times if we just get into it and we're like, oh, I'm so in love, and then, well, what's the next thing we do? Oh, we're just gonna get married. Are you looking at all the factors of marriage? Are you looking at finances and religion and work history, and where you want to live, and how you want to raise children, and all these different things? These are things you got to have conversations about to make a successful marriage.
And a lot of that comes from knowing yourself, knowing what works for you, what doesn't work for you, how you're wired, your ins or your outs. Some of it is compatibility, but some of compatibility is polarity. And so there's a lot of things you need to be aligned with as you go into it. But there are also some things that aren't the same. There are some things that it works because you're opposite in these kind of some of the pivotal ways. And so these are the things that go along with learning yourself and knowing yourself, and I almost think, how profound would it be to as opposed to looking for someone that can meet all of your needs, that can serve me and soothe me and bathe me and feed me and take care of me and have sex with me.
Me.
What if we were looking for somebody that we could serve, that we could take care of, that we could provide for? Like, what if we set out with the intention to look for somebody that is a great place to invest in and build that campfire that is that relationship, as opposed to the selfish, consumeristic commodity way that we treat dating in early relationships these days? Of, what can you do for me? Is this person tall enough for me? Is this person making enough money? Is there body mass, fat percentage right for me? Is it, whatever for me, all these other kind of things? What if we just pivoted our mentality? Either way, going into it affects how you come out of marriage.
Yeah, and I mean, the old cliche is love is blind, and honestly, in a lot of ways, it is. So if you're doing your due diligence, if you're working on yourself, if you have some self-respect and some self-love, and you're attracting somebody into your life or meeting somebody who matches you, it doesn't really matter what all those statistics are, what all that list is about how tall or how big or whatever. If you're a match, you're gonna love that person no matter what they look like. Big nose, big butt, whatever. It's too short, too tall. It doesn't matter. So being aware of who you are, number one, and not going into this with that idea of, well, I need somebody to fix me. Oh, if you'll just come into my life, I'll be a better person. No, nobody wants to fix anybody. Now, we know we always have to support each other, especially in a healthy relationship. But as you're getting into a relationship, you want to be the best possible version of yourself, and that means looking in the mirror, getting some clarity, getting maybe some counseling, some therapy. And even before you get married, if you find a person, starting to look at this, like, are you working on the relationship? Like, what's the best time to have marriage counseling? Before you get married. Start to get into these things and start creating a conversation and start doing therapy and the things that are going to make your marriage successful even before you get married. When you have that kind of mindset and you're coming in from a mindset of service, like, how can I serve this person? How can I bring the wood to the fire? How can I bring the best version of myself to this person, and how can I serve them to be, the best they can be, and me being the best I can be. These are the mindsets we need to have, especially with how marriage is going now. You need to be very open and honest and know that this is not about star-crossed lover syndrome and you living the Disney fantasy of happily ever after. It's going to take some work, but if you find the right person, you're going to want to do that work with that person.
Yeah, the best time to start working on your relationship is before you have one. Also, working again, getting you right. And speaking to guys, man, guys, get your stuff in order, man. Get your stuff ready so that when you do meet that person, when you do meet her, assuming it's her, you can, you're able to provide a space, safety, whatever it is. I mean, you're able to do these things. One prime example, and this kind of goes back to some of my background, is brought this up yesterday. 6 out of 10 divorces involve somebody with a porn problem. Now, I use that as an example to set up the fact that you better be sure that whatever it is you're consuming, the other person is okay with it. And I'm not judging what you consume and how you consume and all that kind of stuff. I got my opinions, my experiences, all those kinds of things. But the fact is, to have something that you're not fully on board with, and to hide that, I'm just going to put that aside or expect that to go away when I get married or when I get in this relationship, that doesn't happen. So if you have something in your life that you want to get rid of it before you even meet the person, so that you're not bringing all of that baggage into a relationship. Because when you keep bringing baggage with you over and over again, that baggage becomes luggage. And that luggage is the dead weight that you expect the other person to carry. And so get rid of all that kind of baggage, get your stuff, get your credit right, get your money right, get your health right, get your freedom right, your purpose, all those kinds of things from a guy perspective. And then, obviously, the advice goes to ladies too, whatever it is that you're insecure about, fix that. If you've been scorned or hurt by a man, go take care of that. Go fix that piece so that you're not bringing that to your next man and dumping all that on him for him to fix.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our little things. This is my thing. We got our vices, our little, whatever it is that we enjoy. And nowadays, we see so many people who are creating this false persona. They're projecting and marketing themselves as something to try to catch somebody instead of being authentic and being who they are, and just being like, hey, this is my thing, this is my vice, this is what I want to do, and I want to let you know up front. And if we match, now we have some glue, we have something that we can stick together with because we both enjoy the same things. And that's why we say so much, know yourself, and then go do things you like to do, and you will probably find somebody who will match what you like to do. Because I mean, honestly, if they're there doing the same thing, they're gonna like to do that. But it starts in the mirror, and so many of us have bought into this fantasy of, oh, she will complete me, or that's my better half, or as soon as I meet the right one, I will become this better person. And yeah, when you meet the right person, they will inspire you to be better. But you also want to be your own inspiration and be as good as you can be, because the odds are not in your favor right now, gentlemen. The odds are just not in your favor, especially when it comes to divorce. I mean, you want to make sure you put your best foot forward before you even get into it.
It's like the Hunger Games. May the odds forever be in your favor. But, when you meet that right person, I don't think they add to you. I think they multiply whoever and what you are. And the reason why you need to be whole is because when you multiply a fraction, you get a fraction. And so, whatever you are, it'll become amplified in the context of a relationship. And so that's why you need to make sure you take care of the you part before you even get into the relationship, such that, your me is intact. Therefore, when you bring your two me's together, then it's like, okay, now we is greater than me. I mean, man, I'm rocking that for the next couple of days. Some of y'all out here might hear that here pretty soon, but you work on that, and one of the ways this plays out, and I'll give her credit, it wasn't her thing, but I'm gonna give her credit yesterday for bringing the female perspective. Our super producer Nikki Nicole, she brought up the female perspective of, like feminine and masculinity, and she was like, well, I don't want to be in my masculine, but I am at work, I'm a boss babe, and I'm focused on work, and I just need a guy that can help bring me out of that. I need a guy that can help me put that down. And we kind of pump the brakes. And the example that I gave her is, if you met a guy and he was living in his mom's basement, but he just said, man, if I just get with you, then you can help me get out of my mom's basement. That wouldn't fly with you, ladies. And so your man should not be responsible for you getting out of your masculine and into your feminine if that is where you need to be for the best version of you, for the best relationship version of you. So it is up to us to get where we need to be and then meet the person that matches where we are.
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about so many times, being a man and holding space so that your woman, when she comes off of work, can slip into her feminine, but that's her process. So, gentlemen, you're not making her switch from masculine to feminine. You're allowing space so that she can, and that's not necessarily your responsibility. You're just there as a space holder. Ladies, when you're putting on this, I will if he, and then, it goes both ways sort of thing where you're like, I don't want to be masculine, but he needs to be more masculine so I can feel safe. Well, that means there's some trauma or some issues that you need to work with and work on. And I think a lot of times, and we even talked to this with Nikki about last night, you need to understand and acknowledge where you are at right now. Because a lot of times you're maybe middle-aged single mother, you might be a guy who's, single father or whatever, who's been through a divorce. Acknowledge where you're at and what that comes with, because it's not going to be the same fairy tale romance that you had in your 20s and what you probably had before that didn't work out because it was toxic or unhealthy, and now you're in a different space. You got to acknowledge where you're at so you know where you're going. And I see so many people who are miserable today because they won't accept where they're at. They won't take that responsibility and look in the mirror and go, okay, I'm middle-aged, I've got kids, my 20s are gone, so here's my sexual marketplace value, here's the honest critique of who I am. Now I need to bring this to the world so that I can meet somebody who's on my level, in my lane, and matches with me.
Yeah.
But if we're not going to take it back, take ourselves out of that victim mode and go, this is who I am, and it's not their fault, it's up to me. You're not on a level playing field unless you do that.
And another reason why guys need to make sure that we have our stuff together is such that when we meet that woman, when we first meet her, we're not looking for validation from her. We already know who we are. We're already bringing our identity. That's kind of how that's why traditionally, the wife will take on the last name. We're supposed to bring our identity from the day one that we meet, where we're not looking for her to say, wow, you're a good man, or wow, you're this, or you're attractive, or we're not looking for that, because when you look for that, then you become nice guy. And when you're nice guy, then you become the pleaser, and no woman can respect the nice guy. I mean, and when she doesn't respect you, eventually, that fizzle that she has for you, as much as you present great, once she starts to see you as that nice guy, that pleaser that she loses respect for, man, the relationship will be over way before you find out, guy. I mean, she'll start to fizzle out. She'll start to back off. She'll start to disappear. She'll start to just fade into the bushes, like that Homer Simpson gif, where
The
he
meme,
just fades into the bushes. She'll start to do that emotionally and relationally. And so we need to make sure we bring that and keep that in the context of relationship, not be all the great guy. Then all of a sudden you get in a relationship and you look for her to be your mama. You look for her to nurture you in terms of, giving you all the nourishment that you need and all those kinds of things. We need to be able to maintain that and hold that space.
Yeah, gentlemen, you are not looking to her for your validation. I don't care what your mama said. I don't care what the school says. We men have our own value. We need to bring that value to the table and own that value and own our inner purpose and our inner being. And that's what's going to attract that female and that woman in your life who will be that multiplication to whatever it is your journey is and what your purpose is. But I tell you what, to Kirk's point, if all of a sudden she's letting you go out with the boys and she has no complaints and she's just like, no, you go ahead. No, it's fine. And she's not, doesn't act upset. I mean, she's already checked out. She's already like, oh, I'm backing off here because he's not pushing my buttons and I feel like I don't have a leg to stand on. So it's always about communication. It's always about connection. It's always about mutual support, and you want to have the communication. That's why we say look at your marriage. Look at if you're getting into thinking about marriage. Look at it like a business. You need to put some prenups and counseling and talk to the preacher and the lawyers and the bankers and get all this stuff agreed upon beforehand. And I think that's why so many people are failing nowadays, because they just dive into it because that's what they're supposed to do without actually putting any forethought or planning into it. And as my father was wont to say, nobody plans to fail, they just fail to plan.
And these are and it is a legal entity. It's a state sanctioned entity. And so when you get a divorce, it's a dissolution of marriage. It's a dissolution of that entity that the government recognizes and the government sanctions, which some people have a beef about that and all those kinds of things. But it is what it is. If you decide to go down to whatever place, court, DMV, whatever you want to go, sign your name and get a marriage certificate, you're saying, hey, government, will you recognize the fact that we are now a legal entity? Well, guess what? Before you go into that legal entity, just like a business partnership, there's probably some very deep conversations you should have and some very transparent, honest conversations. And if you can't have these conversations, then maybe you
Don't do
might
it.
want to delay or not even get married at all. If you can't talk about money, if you can't talk about stuff. And once you get into your 30s, 40s, 50s, and you got kids and houses and 401ks and all these other kind of things,
Assets.
you better have some discussions about that kind of stuff. You
Mhm.
better have some talks about some of those real things. And again, if you can't do that, then then maybe you need to kind of put pause for the cause on whether or not you're ready to make that thing legal or not.
Yeah, pull that eject handle and get out because you're not ready for it. And that's why we spend so much time. And I spent talking about communication. If you cannot clearly communicate and work through these issues and have these discussions, then you're probably not a match. I mean, I don't care how cute her butt is. I don't care how great the sex is. If you can't have these conversations, because once the physical attraction kind of fades and you get older, then it's all about the connection and conversation and what you're building together. So
Yeah.
that's why you want to start with those things before you get into it. Because honestly, gentlemen, the divorce courts are not in our favor nowadays. And so you have a lot more to lose than to gain when it comes to marriage. And I know you think, oh, tax breaks. Well, there's a lot of liability that comes with those tax breaks in marriage. So look at the end game because, as we said last night, and I'll keep reiterating, the person you marry is not the person you divorce. That is a different person sitting across the divorce table as the one that was sitting across the aisle from you. Two different people. They've changed. They don't love you anymore, or they have a lot of animosity. So this is not the same person. So think about and just be honest with yourself. Think about those things that as you grow and change as a person in this relationship, as you get older, you're both going to grow and change. Are you growing apart or are you going together? These are basically your two choices, and you got to do the work to stay together.
You can't follow that chemical trail down the aisle. I mean, you can't follow the cookie crumbs down the aisle in terms of just the feel goods of it all. Feel goods are important, and oxytocin is a hell of a drug, man. It's great for a reason. We're wired for that kind of stuff, and I'm not hating on that. I believe in that. At the same time, I have experienced exactly what you're talking about in terms of, man, that what we used to have. Something happens when
Where'd she
you
go?
all of a sudden now you're living together and you sleep, you wake up and you roll over and like,
Ooh,
ooh,
wait.
is that you? Like, ooh, I mean, when you're like, wow, you might need a
My
brush
eyes are
or
watering. Jeez.
I don't know, somebody might need to check some pH levels or something. I don't know, man. But either way, and then when you get into the day-to-day living and the chores and the bills and all those other kind of things, I mean, things do change. And so you need to make sure that your head and your heart are connected and in line when you go into the decision of, okay, I'm ready to go down the road of actually marrying this person. I mean, that's a huge deal. And in my opinion, there's no rush. Maybe some people just know when they know, and that's great. I mean, that's fantastic. In my opinion, there's just no rush. You need to make sure you know when you're right. I can honestly tell you, I've been in the moment where I'm saying I do, knowing I don't.
Mm.
I'm
Ooh.
telling you, I've been in the moment saying
Mm.
I do, and I wasn't sure, and I
Wow.
had doubts, and I had reservations, and I just thought we can somehow. I don't even. There's no rationale to that. I've been in that moment. I can tell you. I mean, it exists where you're saying, "Yeah, I do," and in the back of your mind, you're thinking, "No, I
Do
actually
I?
don't."
Do I really?
No, not even like questioning. Like, no, I actually don't.
Oh,
Um,
well, that's the
and
thing too.
so
Like to
I, I
your
can
point.
I can honestly say I've been in two weddings, but I've never been married.
Ooh, ouch.
I'm not proud
Mm.
of that, but I'm saying
But
that's the
the
perspective I
truth.
come from. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm just
Well, and
being
that's
honest with you, man. I'm just being real. Judge me
yeah.
if you want, but I'm just being
No,
real.
I'm just saying that's the truth. That's the harsh truth right there. And to your point, if you're thinking about getting married and you're thinking about staying with somebody for life, what is the rush? That's why we talked about the honeymoon phase and getting through at least 2 years and finding out who this person really is, because we as humans do really good 3 to 6 months of keeping those masks up and those walls up and playing whatever role it is we need to play that we got you with. But then the reality of who we really are is going to rear its ugly head after a while. So if you're planning on being with this person you think is for you the rest of your life, take your time and plan it out properly. Don't just rush into these things, because you wouldn't start a business that way. But you rush into a marriage. I mean, you're starting a business with this other person, and do you know who they are? Do you know how they handle money? Do you know how they do business? Do you know how they want to live their life? These are the things you got to have these conversations, and they're not pretty, and they're uncomfortable. But if you're going to be married and you're going to be life partners, you're going to have more uncomfortable conversations probably than comfortable conversations half the time.
Let me tell you what's uncomfortable. What I just said in terms of the fact of I mean, that is uncomfortable, man, and it sucks. But the reason I say that, the reason I put that out there and be that honest, is because I don't want anybody to ever go through that. Like I want to, I'd rather make myself the example and hopefully, have somebody else avoid that, and not go down that same path. And I know for a fact that there's other people who have experienced that same exact moment of say, I would bet you that both of my exes probably had the same exact thought. And, when they were saying I do, like, no, maybe I don't. I mean, I hadn't gotten rid of my addiction. I was still, being, Mr. Pleaser and all, nice guy, funny guy. I was 55 pounds heavier than I am now. I was kind of still doing whatever, all those kind of things. And so I wasn't like the best version of me that I could be. And so I wouldn't be surprised if both of them could say the same thing. Now, one divorce was completely hell. I mean, it was terrible. And the second one was completely not. It was pretty easy. We didn't even have an attorney. We did ourselves. No drama, none of that kind of stuff. And the even my relationship with my kids reflected those two divorces and how they were. And so, man, I just would not want anybody to go down that path, man. So that's why I'll put it out there.
Yeah, and that's why we have these episodes. That's why we're talking about this. That's why this is going to be a multi-episode
absolutely
topic, because this is barely scratching the surface of what we want to get into, because initially we really just wanted to get into the effects divorce has on men, the death process that they go through, the stages of grief and everything that men go through, especially when they're losing half their stuff, not just their relationship and their kids and everything else. But there's so much depth to this that we're going to dig into this even more next week, and probably the week after that. This may end up turning into a 4 or 5 episode thing. So stick with us. When you have questions, when you watch this episode, like and subscribe. Send us your experiences. Send us your questions. Send us like what you may be worried about, and let us talk about it. Let us help you wherever you're at right now, because we're here because this is something we've experienced ourselves or seen others experience one way or the other. Like I saw my parents married and divorced, and then married again, and then in my dad's case, divorced and married again. These are things that we experience, and it's out in the world, so we want to talk about it.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to having this conversation. Again, give us some feedback. Let us know. We got our own perspective. You got yours as well. Based on the statistics, most adults have or will be in this, discussion. I mean, unfortunately, that's not something to be proud of. That's just
reality,
a sad reality of our culture today. And so we want to have these difficult topics that people don't normally have openly and publicly. So we want you to engage and let us know what you think. And we look forward to hearing from y'all. KLDC 1220 a.m. in the Mile High City, Saturdays 8 a.m., Wednesdays 6 p.m., and then on the interwebs everywhere,
all the time.
And with that,
we're out.
Mad Men out.